Provisioning devices for remote employees has required a superhuman effort from IT departments all throughout the pandemic. It's time intensive, it's logistically complex, and it just requires enormous effort. Fair to say, provisioning devices has probably consumed a disproportionate amount of time and energy through the pandemic. Now, Ben Trapp knows all about it. So I want Ben to talk to us today about the concept of zero-touch provisioning. Ben, why don't we start and just give us a high-level overview. What is zero-touch provisioning?
So zero-touch provision is the ability to configure your IT devices remotely without having your IT team actually having hands on those devices.
Great. Now, when you say devices, what categories of devices can this apply to?
Windows OS, iOS, iPad OS, Android, and Mac OS.
Essentially the 5 device categories that most people use.
The five main device categories.
And the 5 device categories that run Office applications.
Correct.
Great. So let's talk first about what's the problem that's being addressed and solved with zero-touch provisioning.
Zero-touch provisioning definitely saves your company a lot of time and resources. So instead of having 80 boxes of laptops or desktops stacked up in your IT office, these devices can go straight from the pallet over to your end user.
Okay, I'm glad you mentioned those boxes, because anytime I've ever gone into a customer's environment, the IT department is usually, you have to navigate your way through all the boxes. Stacks of boxes everywhere, waiting to be imaged or waiting to be shipped.
That's another point. Those devices waiting to be imaged and waiting to be shipped, instead of having those devices imaged and shipped, as soon as the user receives that laptop, opens it up, types in their Azure AD account, it automatically connects to the network, pulls it down from Intune, and applies profiles, applications, OneDrive, files. Everything is on that laptop ready to go as soon as the Azure AD information is entered.
Okay, so the device can be drop shipped directly to the employee. Correct. And configured as an out-of-box experience.
Correct.
And the IT department no longer is full of boxes.
Exactly.
Wow.
The only thing they have to manage are the profiles.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So why is this such a big deal now? Why is everyone talking about zero-touch provisioning now as we're coming out of the pandemic?
Due to IT shortages everywhere, more people are moving remote, having the ability to go straight from pallet to end user as opposed to pallet to the IT office taking time to get it configured and then hand it off to the end user. It's that instant gratification for the end user, being able to work as soon as they receive their laptop.
And I think the second insight from me on what you said around IT shortages is that IT people are working remotely as well.
Correct.
They're not in the office waiting for the next shipment of devices.
Exactly. And they could be working from home, sitting in their office at home, getting these devices provisioned, and it goes straight from the manufacturer to the end users.
But now the difference is anything they're doing is over the cloud. They're not actually in the office physically touching the devices.
They have that immediate gratification as well.
Yeah,
or
fantastic.
After they update that profile, say Joe is using his laptop at home, it's going to receive that update pretty much immediately.
Yeah. So as we come out of the pandemic, we're seeing remote working become permanent for many companies, or hybrid working, and more people joining companies and working remotely. So talk to us a little bit about zero-touch provisioning in the context of a remote worker far away from the office who may never come to the traditional office environment. What's the experience for that remote worker?
So the experience is a definite change from the past, having those devices imaged in an office. The device can go straight from a pallet, as I was saying previously. The device can go straight from the pallet to the end user. And as soon as the end user opens it up, gets their Azure AD information logged in, they're able to receive the profiles, application, and OneDrive information just from the cloud.
So everything downloads to the device.
Correct. Instead of being able to provide efficient work on day 21, new hires are able to get started day 1.
Okay, that's a huge difference.
It is a huge difference.
Because we know in some industries like healthcare, it can be literally weeks.
It can,
before somebody gets a machine that's fully built and ready for them to work.
Correct.
So you're saying now we can do that on day 1, even for a remote employee.
Exactly.
That's a game changer.
It is.
So what are the technology building blocks for companies who want to embrace zero-touch provisioning? How do they do this?
So in order to embrace zero-touch provisioning, you start with your hub, which is going to be Intune.
Okay.
And from Intune, you have several spokes leading off. And those spokes are going to be things like Apple Business Manager, Android Enterprise, Samsung Knox, and Windows Autopilot.
Gotcha.
And those spokes connect to each manufacturer Say if you're buying laptops from Microsoft, Microsoft will upload those hash files of each device. It'll upload that hash into Windows Autopilot, which will then feed into your Intune environment.
Right. So for example, if I order a pallet load of Windows machines for my employees, or a shipment of them, the manufacturer puts the serial numbers into the Windows Autopilot program.
Correct.
And they appear in my Intune instance.
Correct. And at that point, you can just assign them out to the end users and apply policies to them directly.
Wow. Okay. And then is it similar in an Apple world and a Google world and a Samsung world?
It would be the exact same, except for the spoke, as I was saying previously. So you have the hub, which is going to be your Intune, and each individual spokes for iOS and iPads and Mac devices, you're going to be using Apple Business Manager. For Android devices and otherwise, you'll probably be using Android Enterprise or Samsung Knox.
Yeah. How far can you go in personalizing that experience for the end user? Like, can you have their personal OneDrive folders and files and applications they need?
So with zero-touch provisioning, as soon as they get it logged in, anything that is assigned to their specific account or group that they may be in is automatically applied to that computer.
Okay, so that could include OneDrive.
Correct. That's going to include OneDrive. That's going to include things like Microsoft, and anything Microsoft related is going to come down. Anything actually specific to the machine will be applied.
Fantastic. And so the benefits for IT are enormous then, saving time.
You're saving time.
Cutting out one leg of the logistics, I guess.
Removing a large chunk of time from the first step of getting that device provisioned. You're removing that, and you can take that time and apply it to other things, such as building out the profiles or anything configuration related.
What happens at the end of life? Let's say you have that device for 2 or 3 years, and it needs to be re-provisioned. In the past, the device had to be shipped back to IT, and they had to rebuild it, modify the registry, do all that. What happens now if you set up a device with zero-touch provisioning?
So if you set up a device with zero-touch provisioning and it's been, say, 3 years, you have user data on it, you can simply wipe that user data in Intune, and then also in Intune you can change the autopilot information to a new user, sign it out to someone else, and as soon as they log in, all their stuff will be coming to that device.
So the device doesn't need to be shipped back to the office?
Correct. It could be shipped to the next user. It could be shipped anywhere.
Why doesn't everyone do this?
At this point, they will. It's just a matter of time until they implement it.
Okay. And what does it cost to implement zero-touch provisioning?
If you have Microsoft Intune, you can implement autopilot rather easily. You just need to go through the steps. So the price would be for the work to be done as opposed to implementing it.
So if you've got Microsoft 365, you already own Intune, and you got access to the autopilot program, and the Apple Business there's no cost. And same with Android.
Enterprise,
okay.
Free,
so it's really just the engineering effort to design and build it, test it, make sure that the end user experience is exactly as you want it to be.
Correct.
And when they configure, when they sign in. Yeah. Would you consider this to be a nice to have or a must have?
I would consider it to be a nice to have, though as time goes on, it's going to be a must have at some point. Having everybody work from home and things moving remote, it's going to be a huge next step in an organization. Yeah.
And where does zero-touch provisioning fit into the overall modern endpoint management framework?
It's going to be the very start of your life cycle. As the end user receives this device, at that point, autopilot's enabled, and then everything is applied to the device. So it starts.
It's really day one of the life cycle.
Correct.
For the employee, and probably then day 1000 as well.
Correct.
When the device needs to be re-provisioned.
Exactly.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you.